How do you know when a feature is done? Features are never done.
Never done.
Yeah. I like that I asked the question, then answered it for you. Hey everybody, welcome to Founder Cliff Notes. I'm Ashley Smith, founding partner of Vermilion Cliffs Ventures, an early stage venture fund. Today, I'm super excited that we have co-CEOs and co-founders of Clarify, Austin Hay and Patrick Thompson joining. Clarify is the autonomous CRM that helps you sell more. Let's just go ahead and dive in. So Patrick, Austin, tell me a bit about what made you start Clarify, why now? Let's get into it.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, Ashley, excited to be on the podcast and appreciate all the support you've given us as well. A little bit more about Clarify. We're an autonomous CRM that is effectively always up to date, trying to do automate as much manual effort as we can for folks. We started Clarify in the beginning of 2024. Austin and I were connected previously at my last startup with Andre Hirabeck, who's one of the other co-founders here at Clarify, where he was a customer, and we came together in the beginning of 2023, did a bunch of customer discovery. And the number one problem that we actually heard from teams is just not trusting their customer data and making use of their CRM. We saw a lot of this just because of the manual effort required for teams.
Got it. And tell me a bit about how you two met. I know you said you worked together, but did you meet when you were working together, or did you know each other prior?
So Austin was a customer of ours back iteratively. So we were building a CDP. Austin is the de facto expert on all things MarTech. Came across iteratively. It was super helpful. It brought us into Postmates and a bunch of other companies, and eventually became a customer of ours at Runway. Kind of just kicked it off. And ever since then, that's the origin story of how we met, and then became friends and eventually co-founders for Clarify.
Awesome. And I get asked this question, or a version of this question, really often. You've had a very full career. I think between the two of you, you've had 12 plus startups, I think is the number I saw thrown out that you've started. Why again? Why now? Building a startup is really hard, as you both know. Why did you do it again?
And Austin, what's the impetus for you to work on Clarify?
Yeah, I feel like this was maybe one of the first founder discussions we had, Ashley, where we were really digging in, and being vulnerable about what drives us. And so first I would say, working for startups is very different than founding a startup. And I've had the pleasure of working at a lot of awesome startups, but I never had the opportunity to create one or be the genesis of it. I was employee number 4 at this company called Branch. I was one of the first 100 employees after that at a company called Imparticle, one of the first 200 or so at Ramp, first 10 at Runway. So I've experienced a lot of the early stages of startup life, but there's something different about being in the driver's seat than there is about being in the passenger seat, as much as, we like to talk about being owners as early operators. So I think for me, that was an unsolved piece of business that I really wanted to do. And the second thing, though, that I think was more important than that is I had always really wanted to work with people I admired and thought would make me better as an operator and a human. And I still have this really distinct memory when I was working at maybe before I was working at Runway, I was working with Pat and Andre at Clarify, or at Iteratively, which is their previous company. And I don't have many memories from that time. I'm a little older now, so I think my memory is fading.
Completely. I met Pat 5 or 7 years ago when you were doing Iteratively, and I remember that meeting very specifically, but I don't remember anything other than where we met in Seattle.
Well, I remember specifically that I was helping Pat and Andre land a customer account. I think it was Postmates, and I was kind of beating Andre up in this Slack channel about their SDK and the things I wanted and what was helpful and the problem context. And I think my experience had just been, working with a lot of startups is who don't take hard feedback about product and make it better. I was just expecting to this wouldn't work out. And I remember Andre and Pat responding instantly to me, creating solutions instantly. I remember Andrew, who's now one of our first engineers, building something for us. And the only impression I remember from that whole experience was wow, these are people that I want to work with. And so I think when the opportunity came up to build Clarify, it was not only about the problem, which I feel very passionate about, and I could speak for another 10 minutes about the problem space itself of the CRM, but it was about working with people who I thought would actually make me a lot better.
And you all really have worked with a lot of the people you're working with currently before in other iterations, like you talked about. And whenever I'm talking to founders, I always try to figure out, can these people problem solve together, or are they going to fight the whole time? Or like, can these earliest employees like really ship together? Or do they have to spend the first year of working together, learning how to work together? So I really like that everyone sort of has working experience together on the team. Kind of to that end, y'all are co-CEOs, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, you have to really be able to work together really well and understand each other's strengths and also weaknesses to make that work.
So I think the one thing people don't realize, and this being kind of the third startup that I've helped co-found, but second one with the CEO title, is that the CEO role is very lonely. It is extremely hard. You have to wear many, many hats. And I think a lot of people go into it with the wrong expectations of what they're looking for. And so for me, actually going and starting another company, I was very, very clear in my mind that I wanted somebody to help carry the bag and share the workload and augment some of the things that I felt were my own weaknesses in my role as well. And so connecting with Austin, it was great because I felt like we complement each other in many ways, but also have our own unique skill sets that we can bring to the table. And so for me, it's like I spend a lot of my time focusing on the customer and the product. Austin spends a lot of time focusing on operations and team and culture and being able to make sure that we're building the best company from the beginning. And so like it just is a lot more helpful not to have to think about all the things that you have to do in company building, and you have a partner there as well. And I think that's one of the things that I was looking for in this startup as well. So yeah, it's been great to have Austin and share that responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, I resonate so much with everything Patrick said. I would just add that for me, like I said, I'd worked at a lot of startups before, but I'd never started one. And I think actually I had a little bit of lack of confidence around my ability to do it. Now, what that's translated to is having a partner who's been through the experience, who can really coach, nurture, teach, and guide me on being a first-time startup CEO, which I get great advice from Patrick every day, and I'm so grateful for it. And I think the second reason I want to be a co-CEO is I think that it actually ultimately leads to better outcomes for the company. I had done a bunch of research about co-CEOs. Another thing too, Pat was very nice in calling me a MarTech expert, but I think I've worked in product adjacent spaces my whole career. And again, thinking about the first company that I do, I was thinking to myself, well, I either have to go hire a really good head of product or partner with a good head of product or a good leader in product. And I knew firsthand from working with Patrick previously as a customer that he was that ideal person. So again, a lot of this is actually reiterating what I think Pat put so well, which is that the co-CEO role is much like a partnership. You find the areas where you're both strong and weak and you blend together. And I think most importantly, it's just been awesome having somebody that you can talk to along with the journey, because it is very lonely. It is very scary. Even when you have a CEO and a CTO working together as co-founders, it can be kind of overwhelming, the amount of work you have to do and the decisions you have to make. And I feel like one of the really cool parts of Clarify is that Pat and Andre already have this really unique relationship from their prior startup. Pat and myself have this great unification of experience and alignment from being co-CEOs. So it just allows us to operate really quickly and also to make decisions that I think in the long run are going to be much better for the organization.
Yeah, and it really resonates, the loneliness piece. Like, I'm a solo GP, right? I run the fund by myself. The interesting thing for a lot of solo fund managers is we kind of all band together and have like our little group chats and things that make it feel like a team, but none of us are like working every day together on the same deal or the same fundraising process or whatever it is. And so I'm really in a positive way envious of having that like co-CEO piece to have someone to lean on and have great trust with.
I was going to say the only other thing I'd add is I spent 4 of the best years of my career working at Atlassian, where we had two co-CEOs in Mike and Scott there, and was just able to see kind of the operational excellence that they brought to the table in building a generational company. So like definitely was something that I felt like we wanted to model as well.
Awesome. And would you mind digging into some of those, you don't have to name like 10, but maybe 2 or 3 of the things you saw work really well at Atlassian when you had co-CEOs?
I think division of labor was really clear for them. They each had their own areas of the business that they were running and operating, but you can also see like their own personalities come out as well. So like, who leaned more into kind of the softer skill side of the business, who leaned more into the harder skill side of the business. You can just kind of see that depending on who was speaking. And I thought that was really, it was nice because they complemented each other. And one of the things that I really respected about the way that they ran that company is it felt like, again, like any of them, whoever was speaking, whether or not it was Mike or Scott, spoke with the authority of the organization, but they're able to have perspective on how the entire organization was run as well.
Got it. I was just listening to the Smartless podcast and they interviewed the co-CEOs, Warner Bros., I think. And it was very interesting to hear how they work together to get like giant movies made, and their careers were incredible. And they went really far into how they work together to ship some of the biggest, movies out there. It was really interesting. So this week, super exciting. You've announced that you have raised an A. The market right now is really interesting for a lot of people. A lot of the data coming out and showing it's harder to raise an A, but great companies are still getting funded. So first, congratulations, huge win. I've always said like funding should not be something that we brag about, but in this instance, or in all instances right now, it should be, because it shows that you have traction, you have great product, you have great team. So just congratulations on raising the A, and talk a bit about it. Like what do you plan for the next maybe year? What are you excited about? All those good things.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley, and appreciate it. Definitely just a milestone and not a celebratory moment in of itself, but very much happy to have the additional capital to go execute our strategy and have the conviction from some great investors who wanted to join us on this journey as well. The things that are probably worth highlighting is, yes, we have a great team. We have early signs of product market fit and customers who love what we're working on. And that's been really great to be able to capitalize. We ended up getting preempted on our Series A from a few investors who just loved the traction that we had and are very excited to continue to expand out the team, hire some more amazing talent to be able to go execute our vision and strategy.
Awesome. And what are some things you might have learned during your fundraising? I know you mentioned you got preempted, but I'm sure, and I know this along the way, there have been a lot of investors trying to figure out what you're doing, what your traction is, what you're up to. So do you have any tips for someone that might be fundraising right now? Either pre-seed and seed, is very hard to raise. Like all rounds are hard to raise right now. So any tips or advice you have for any of the founders fundraising?
When I think about our fundraise, I feel like one, we did it in October. So my first advice to people is like, don't do it at the end of the year. It's super stressful. Funds are usually wrapping at that time. It's really hard. It eats into holiday time. And I think if you have the capacity to raise at almost any other point in the year, you're probably going to be better off. So that's just my personal advice to founders out there. Now, again, we weren't in a situation where we could control that and we made it work. But if you have the ability to control it, that's just more a tactical piece of advice. The second is, basically, Pat, I mean, you knew this going in. This was my first time experience doing it. The second you have that first conversation with a VC to start raising, everybody else in the whole valley and everybody else in New York and Seattle is going to be coming at you to have conversations. So you really have to be prepared both mentally, physically, and spiritually for the process. I think for us, it was different because we were approached by a lot of investors. And so we weren't actually ready and we weren't actually expecting to be preempted in the case of the Series A. What that meant for us is like we had to quickly align as a team, craft our vision for the future, and design the outcome we wanted very quickly. And yeah, doing that during the holidays is really, really tough. So I think that was the second part of like the challenge for us, was just getting alignment really quickly on how we'd grow the business into the future. The third thing, which I think is maybe the most important, is the thing that I think made the Series A so impactful and easy, was just having really clear product and customer outcomes. And at that moment in time when we had raised, we had a bunch of customers that were just starting to use the product, were really loving it. And again, seeing these signs of early product market fit, being able to see, feel, and experience the product, being able to see how the CRM was working for them automatically, that's what sold the dream. And so this is obvious advice to anybody out there raising, but I think a lot of founders actually go try to raise on a deck and a dream, but like the number one thing you can do is just build the product that you want, showcase it to investors. That's going to give you the greatest pull in having these conversations with folks. Pat, you were a lot more involved, I'd see, in some of the VC conversations than I was until the end. What were some of like the early learnings, and then maybe 6 months out, what do you feel like you learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things that you called out are definitely true, right? Having metrics is obviously better than just having a story and a vision. Having a great story is obviously super helpful, and being able to think big when it comes to the plan for the company as well. I think we had a very well articulated story of how we wanted to build a generational company. I think that's what got a lot of folks excited, and we had a very clear articulation of how we wanted to go achieve that and how this capital would ladder up into being able to go execute that. Ultimately we had customers who loved what we were doing, right? And so being able to have referenceable customers, be able to have some metrics around product usage and adoption, be able to show wins and rip outs of HubSpot and Salesforce, that was very clear early signs for investors that we're building something that was truly special. It wasn't just a more modern CRM experience today. So I think all that helped. I think we told a lot of investors investors in the beginning of 2024 what we're going to do that year. And so at the end of 2024, it was very easy. Did we achieve what we said we were going to achieve? And I think resoundingly, we hit all the metrics that we wanted to hit. We hired an amazing team and we had a very good early version of the product. And so I think that led to a lot of the investors believing that we'll be able to execute the things that we're saying we were going to do over time. And again, a lot of the relationships that we have, even for our Series A investors, were built over the course of months, if not years. So I would definitely recommend folks don't go spend all your time talking to investors, but make sure that you're building relationships and that you're able to execute what you're telling folks you're going to execute as well.
One thing too, Pat, that I'm just remembering what I felt like happened then and is happening now is as we showed people our solution, we often would get product feedback from them because we approached every conversation call as an opportunity to learn. And so we'd be talking to investors and we'd ask for their product feedback, what we could do better. And we actually found that over time, many of the people who were interested in investing in us were actually interested in using the product itself. For us, that was like a big unlock where we actually found that some of our investors could be customers. One, it had the benefit of creating kind of some viral word of mouth. But then two, we actually just had more people to get feedback from. And obviously, if they could see themselves using the product, they could see how other people could use the product. So that was maybe a unique advantage that we had as a company. I know not all companies can do this, but if you have a way to not only show the product to your investor, but get them to use it and feel the magic, it just makes the whole process a lot easier because they can see in themselves the customer that you're speaking to.
Absolutely. And I think you have so many advantages because you're such a great team, great product, great vision, like big market. You have your communication style is so clear, like your investor updates. I can read them and I know what's going on. I'm not like, oh no, is there a problem? Like it's something like I know like exactly what's happening. I think they're so well done. But really being able to see and use the product and understand the product is so important. I get pitched so many things that I can never actually use because I'll be like enterprise database product. And I'm like, I don't have enterprise database. Like I can go use like test data, but like it isn't in my day to day. So yeah, I just think that's a unique advantage that people can actually use the product as investors. So, Vogue is something I've loved since I was a kid. They do this great thing. They do 73 questions, rapid fire, with celebrities walking through their very nice homes. I'm not going to make you walk around your hotel room, Patrick. But if you want to, I don't think the Wi-Fi will survive it. I'm not going to ask you guys 73 questions, but I'm going to do a few. And the goal is just kind of like off the top of your head, answer what you think makes the most sense at the moment. I think we're going to alternate since it's rapid fire. Does that work for both of you? And if the other one wants to add anything, just jump in. I don't get offended when I get interrupted. So,
yeah, if you want to steal some of my favorite ideas, Pat, you can.
Austin, I'm going to start with you. What's one thing in your tech or marketing tech stack you've never compromised on?
There's two answers to this question. I'll cheat a little bit. One, I think if you're asking, hey, what's a tool in your stack you never compromise on? It's really easy for us. We're dogfooding Clarify, and so we use Clarify every single day to run our go-to-market process. And like I talked about before with the VC advantage, we have this unique advantage too in that we are using Clarify to build the next generation of company. So if we can't solve a problem internally, we know that we have not met our customers' needs. So it's like this amazing flywheel where it's like we get to dog food the product gets better. And so that's just one thing that me and Pat felt very strongly about from the beginning is like, we're not going to go try to jerry rig a bunch of other third-party solutions until we get to the point where Clarify is good enough. We're going to use it from the start, no matter how painful it is, so that our engineers and everybody else is on the journey with us. And I think that has given us a lot of customer empathy. The other version of this question, though, which is like, what is one thing? So it could not be a tool, it could be something else. And I think Pat and I we talk about this like literally every week, and it's metrics. You can't drive a business without clear, understandable, concrete metrics that you can trace back to their historical lineage and also have confidence when you give them to your investors and your teammates. And this is really hard because as a scaling company, capturing metrics is not always your first priority, knowing where they live, having historical accuracy, but the process and the rigor of capturing metrics and reporting them and making them the most important part of your business, that muscle memory does not happen overnight. You're not going to wake up one day and just suddenly start reporting metrics when you didn't before. So this is maybe a long-winded answer, but like it's one thing that I'm really grateful for Patrick because he is, as manically obsessed with metrics as I am, but it's also like the most important part of our stack. It's like something that we really obsess over, like the things that we're capturing and guiding to actually accurate? And if not, how do we capture them to make sure they are?
Patrick, one tool or product that you wish existed but doesn't yet. And don't go build this in like 3 years. And if you do, think about feedback.
No, it was a bit of a facetious statement, but I still think there's so much room that we have with Clarify and what we can do and what's possible here. So I think about a lot of the pain points that I have just even on the go-to-market side, sales side today. And it's really like, how do we make Clarify better for addressing some of those pain points? So a lot of this is around like automated email follow-up, the ability to understand what feature requests each customer is asking, right? We're building this effectively graph into Clarify general understanding around your customer, this canonical customer 360 that just never really exists in most companies. And so I think that's the thing that when we think about intelligence, or this whole notion of ambient intelligence that we're building into the CRM, we have early signs of that, but there's still just a lot more progress we need to make there. And if you ask me like, what would I be willing to pay for? What's the number one thing that I'm looking for that doesn't exist right now? It's that, even for us as an early stage company. The nice, fortunate thing that we have is that we're building it and we're in the early stages of getting out the door.
Please build that for me, because as you know, my email response time is 12 seconds or 12 days and there's no in between. And if you just figure out how to help me with that, I'd be very happy. All right, Austin, what's the latest technical problem that really frustrated you?
Ooh, technical problem that really frustrated me. Yeah, not to plug too much on Clarify, but that's kind of why we're here. So one thing that happens pretty often at Clarify is I want to get data inside of Clarify, and Andre, our CTO, will say, well, there's no roadmap room for it. And so then I have to go figure out a way to do it around him. The latest example of this is LinkedIn, though. I have so many conversations in LinkedIn, often that lead to discovery calls and customers actually onboarding to Clarify. And I want that context inside the tool so that I can actually convey to Patrick, and we have a go-to-market leader named Travis on the team. I can actually get them to understand what's happening in a deal. And there was really no good way of doing this. So that was like a really frustrating thing that has happened over the last 6 months, is like, how do we do this? Now, the answer is we have to go build this into Clarify, and we are going to do that. That's on our roadmap. We'll have the ability to pull in LinkedIn conversations into Clarify in a very unique way. But in the meantime, I had to go figure something out. And it wasn't until so this was a problem for probably like 2 or 3 months. And then we found this tool called Condo, which they're a different third-party solution. It's a Chrome extension. We're able to build a solution to it, but it took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of energy. So I don't know if you wanted a technical problem that I couldn't solve. This is one that I could solve, and it took a lot of time and frustration. But I think now that we have it, it's really awesome. We have LinkedIn conversations in our activity feed inside records. Those are getting populated when we do things like deal summaries. It's context that people cannot just look at, but like the CRM is actually incorporating that into its automatic responses. And you can imagine a version of the world pretty soon where, as you have conversations on LinkedIn, that data flows into the CRM. It gets bundled with your email and your calendar and every other touch point that you have. And when you go to draft a message to somebody, or when you go to respond to a deal, you're not having to go chase your founder or somebody on your team about what conversations you were having, which to me has always, there's tools like Cabal that are really awesome in connecting to people. But for me, I feel like that context really needs to live inside the place that you're tracking deals and relationships.
All right, what's your unfair advantage as a founder, technical or otherwise?
So the unfair advantage of the founder in my mind is just grit or mental fortitude. Startups are extremely hard when things go south. The ability to be able to respond, not emotionally, but be able to have the right presence, be able to think through all of the scenarios, and be able to show up for yourself, for your team, for your co-founders is extremely valuable. The only other way that I can always think about answering this question is just hard work. There's nothing that you're going to do that's harder than starting a company, in my mind. Ability to show up every single day, be the first one on and off the field, essentially, helps set the tone for the rest of the team. It helps kind of set the pace and the trajectory for the company. It's not easy at all to be able to enter the arena and become a founder. So again, grit, mental fortitude, and just resilience are the things that I think really kind of make or break a company at the end of the day, because you will experience adversity. You will experience things that aren't going well for you, and just how do you show up and respond is paramount.
Agree. And if something isn't going wrong, then you probably just don't know about it. That's what I've kind of learned, I think, when early stage startups. How do you know when a feature is done? Features are never done.
Never done.
Yeah. I like when I asked the question, then answered it for you. What's the most overrated advice you hear in startup circles?
I personally feel like, this is a little hot take, but not all feedback is equal. So you have to prioritize what feedback is important and relevant. A lot of people will read newsletters and other things online and think that it has equal weight and relevancy. And it actually is your job to figure out what to apply and what to ignore. And that only applies to subscriptions and newsletters, but also the feedback you hear and feel from other people's experiences. Not to say that you should ignore your people, but sometimes advice and feedback is not relevant.
I always try to give people that note before I give feedback or advice. Even when I'm writing it, I'm like, this won't apply to everyone. I don't always know what I'm talking about. So I really appreciate that one. What's the most underrated advice you hear in startup circles?
Manage your energy to avoid burnout.
What was your worst startup idea?
I mean, this wasn't a serious idea, but my
what?
sister and I thought about creating Boomer Camp, where we
Oh,
send our parents and other elderly generation folks out to learn how to use technology and etiquette.
I think it's a real thing. What's the one signal you care most about right now?
Customer love.
And always. First concert.
This is the same one for me for 11 and 12. First concert and last concert.
Oh.
82.
Blink-182.
Yeah.
How many years apart?
0.
Oh my gosh. I have so many follow-up questions from that. Okay, Patrick Thompson. Answer first and last. And if it's also Blink-182 and it's your only concert, I'm going to have to take you both to some shows.
I think it was the Eagles and Ohio.
Okay, all right. Your favorite analog hobby or activity?
Water skiing. Is that analog?
Yeah, very.
Yeah, okay.
Patrick, I want your answer on this one too.
Fly fishing.
Okay, all right. Those are both great. Do either of you ever fly fish while water skiing?
No, we were just talking about this though. I go skiing on a lake and
Yeah.
somebody once got caught in a fishing line water skiing. Somebody tried to grab them. Apparently they weren't injured, but I told Pat that and I was like, how does that even happen,
I don't understand. Okay. All right. Favorite season.
For me, it's fall. I live on
Okay.
the East Coast in DC,
Yep.
which is like California every season except summer.
I'm in New York and fall is by far my favorite. I like the colors. I like the weather best. Patrick, you're in
I
Seattle.
like
So
spring
yeah.
coming out of winter.
Yeah, I'm like, do you have raining or not raining? No, that's not
Pretty
true.
much.
But there's some beautiful weather in the spring in Seattle. It's like you get the blue skies. It's really nice. Well, thank you both so much for chatting with me a bit. Tell me more about Clarify. And again, congratulations on the fundraise. Thank you everyone for tuning in to Founder Cliff Notes.